Welcome to the No Budget Filmcast, where we dip into the independent film universe to highlight those little films that you might not have heard about elsewhere. Will you agree with our panel, or will our panel agree with each other? Tune in to find out. I am Milo Dennison, and with me, as always, is Claire Milan.
Hello.
And Cathal Feeney.
Hello.
All right, folks. Today we are looking at a documentary film called RUMRUNNE'S Paradise. So it was produced and written by Mary D. Ciceri, probably mispronouncing that, and directed by Jim Zimmer. And so what this is a documentary about Washington State, specifically focusing on the Spokane area and some Seattle area during Prohibition. So basically it follows the lead up to Prohibition, the city during Prohibition, and just a little bit during the right after the repeal of Prohibition. There we go. Couldn't say it. So what's interesting about it, though, is for me had more to do because it's the same factual type information about Prohibition in the U.S. It was a little different because in Washington State, they even called this out in the documentary about how a lot of the rum runners and the criminals were much more nicer than, say, like Chicago or New York ones where they were shooting at each other. They had a guy out of Seattle named Roy Homestead, I think was the name. And his rule with his runners and smugglers was like nobody was allowed to carry firearms. He basically was like, hey, I'd rather just lose a load than somebody get killed. And part of it had to do with Roy was a former police officer in Seattle, and he saw how much money the illegal liquor business was making, and he kind of switched over into that business. So that was kind of an interesting difference between the Washington State rum runners than the other. And it makes sense too, because they talk about this as well, proximity to Canada. So it was really easy to drive up to Canada and then race booze back. So a lot of that stuff was fun. But what I liked about this documentary had to do with the way it was edited. So it was really a mixture of filmed reenactments. It had interviews with people speaking to the camera. It had a voiceover. It had fun music that would pick up throughout. It would cut to scenes of actually a band playing. And it was edited in a lot of ways to give it kind of that classic look. It would sometimes do framing. It would do haze around the edge, which if you're watching this, you can actually see with Cahall's picture that he chose behind him there. Sepia toning in a lot of the images, and even the reenactments, they did a tone and they did that kind of effect, that scratchy effect to give it that old film look. The way images kind of came in and came out and placed next to each other. They would cut to stuff. So they'd have a comedy break. So they'd cut to this ventriloquist and he'd set up a joke with this ventriloquist dummy and kind of deliver that. And so it was just kind of it was an interesting way of editing it versus another popular. The first thing that comes to me when I think historic documentaries is Prime Minute, the guy, I can't think of his name. But anyway, where they just kind of have an image that comes in and it kind of slowly fades in and out and moves right to left or just cuts to stuff. So they're all very, a very similar look to a lot of documentaries, towards this one kind of played with that a little bit and kind of tried to make it a bit more fun. So I thought that was kind of interesting in regards to the way this was done. And from what I know of the Prohibition era in Washington State and stuff, the accuracy seems correct. It was produced for PBS, which is the public broadcasting service in the States. So you can kind of trust the accuracy of it. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting documentary. As you said, a lot of these historical documentaries can be done very, very badly and kind of a bit boring, and because this is such a fascinating topic. I've seen fascinating topics being destroyed by just boring the way they've done it. But I love the way they mixed it up, as you said, Milo, with the kind of the footage, the photographs, the people talking, and then the kind of theatrical nature to it. So it really kept me interested all the way through. And you can tell it was kind of I say it was a low to no budget documentary, but yeah, it was really interesting. And I didn't know much about Prohibition really, and except from The Great Gatsby, I haven't really looked into it. But yeah, it is interesting, and I think in one said they said didn't when they went into Canada they changed the way the Canadians used to drive on the left, was it, or in British Columbia, and then they changed to the right.
It was since it was British, part of the British Empire at one point. Yeah, exactly. So they swapped driving on the road, which was awesome. Yeah,
that's crazy. Just in case any drunk people from the US were crossing the border and thought they were driving on the wrong, they were driving on the wrong side or the right side, so it's just really, really well done. And yeah, it kept my interest up all the way through. And I like the mixture stuff, the mixture of the kind of theatrical, the photographs, and yeah, it was a fascinating time. And it's crazy to think there was prohibition. It's crazy. Like that they actually tried to ban alcohol, and of course it's going to fuel bootleg places and illegal places. If you ban anything like that, it actually went up the consumption of alcohol. But it's crazy to think before it was introduced, the amount of alcohol people drunk. They said, and I think it was like half a liter of spirits or vodka a day or something.
I don't remember what the number was. Yeah,
but something like crazy like that. And I just thought it was interesting. And they talk about the pastor who came in, the preacher. And so I think it was brought in to bring down. It wasn't just to get rid of alcohol; it was to close down a lot of the saloons and stuff as well. So there's more to it than just about getting rid of alcohol. And the crazy stuff, the propaganda they put across, saying like, it'll be 3 generations later, you'll be affected for 3 generations if you drink alcohol, and crazy stuff. Yeah, it's very hard.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you drink alcohol, you're gonna harm your child and your grandchild because you drink alcohol. Yeah, it was fun.
Just crazy, and probably just stuff like that going on nowadays. I'd say with we don't realize probably, or we do realize.
Yeah, but exactly. If you get vaccinated, your grandchildren will be harmed in some way.
Exactly. But it's amazing that this actually came into law. That's the difference. But yeah, really enjoyed it. Very well done, and kept my attention all the way through. With a lot of these documentaries, especially the low budget ones, don't do that often. So yeah, really thought it was really good.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You're not going to like me.
Carl hates everything American.
Yeah. No, not really. Well, I found it very entertaining. Absolutely. And there were some great anecdotes in there, which I'm definitely going to use, such as the driving on the right, and the, changing from the left to the right, and that story of the trial where the jury drank all the evidence. But I did, like, it was a very interesting topic. But I thought it was history as entertainment more than history. I mean, I'm not doubting the veracity of everything they said, but I just thought it was told in such a way that they were putting across a point of view that this was just a jolly good caper. There was this all fun and games and nobody got hurt, and then there was definitely a slant to the way they made it, they produced it, and I kind of felt, I was sort of being manipulated in a way. I'm sure it would. I mean, I yield to your like knowledge on this since it is your home state, but I'm sure it wasn't completely. A sort of after you sort of very polite little arrangement that they had. I'm sure there must have been some sort of strong arming and violence. I mean, nobody with that much money and people enriching themselves to such an extent that there must have been more to it than meets the eye. I felt, and and presenting the sort of the anti-alcohol lobby as the puritanical Bible thumping spoil sports. Like, okay, maybe they were, but yeah, I would have liked a bit of a kind of a bit more nuanced sort of look at it. What were the social aspects at the time? Why was it so unpopular? And I'm sure there were. Like huge problems, with antisocial behaviour and violence and all the rest. Not that I'm necessarily saying prohibition was the way to go or anything like that, but it was very one-sided. I felt. And the music, by the way, I kind of felt that was was okay, but I just kind of felt it was a bit intrusive at times. It was. I was trying to listen to what they were saying. I hear ding 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 the whole time.
Funny, someone mentioned that down in the comments. Actually, the exact same thing about how intrusive the music was. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, like it was very entertaining, and went along with it. Had a nice clip and everything like that. But I mean, even the guy with the restaurant, talking about like he's like my grandpappy like built this restaurant during Prohibition. Like imagine, in 100 years' time, like, drugs are legalized, and there's somebody makes a documentary about like the drug industry and drug smuggling and everything. My granddaddy built this casino from his crack cocaine business, 100 years ago. So I mean, they were criminals. There was corruption. Like they were, the police and the state were, completely corrupt. Yeah. So I wouldn't be sort of go overboard on looking at it through like sepia tinted glasses.
Yeah, I mean, you make valid points. It's certainly a bit one-sided, but to be honest, how often do you find a documentary that isn't slanted one way or the other? So that's true. And certainly there's going to be stuff that was left out of the story because it's only, 45 minutes, something like that. So we're not getting everything, because that's when you look at one of those like multi-episode long-running documentary kind of things. So this is kind of sharing that very specific story. And of course, yeah, bad stuff happened, obviously, but it's just kind of it was just kind of a fun take on it.
But interestingly, I've written about this recently. Similarly, Irish whiskey was the most popular Irish brand of whiskey in the States before Prohibition, and then during Prohibition, people were making their own whiskey and branding it as Irish whiskey. So the reputation of Irish whiskey suffered. So then, when Prohibition ended, people didn't really trust Irish whiskey. And then after the war, particularly, Scotch whiskey came into the market, and they, like the British government, they had sort of the resources to sort of to push their Scottish whiskey brand, and then that sort of became more popular. So,
and now Irish whiskey is once again the most popular.
Is it? I don't know. I don't know.
It's probably very popular. I don't know. Jack Daniel's is probably pretty popular as well. So it's probably probably up there.
You're a whiskey aficionado.
I am. Yeah, that's why I'm trying to. I know. Jameson's certainly the most popular one sold there, but I don't know how overall Irish versus American whiskeys, which one gets sold.
What about Scotch though? I mean, is that not popular?
Yeah, Scotch as well is really popular. But yeah, I don't know. But to this, they certainly put a much more fun slant on it. And I think part of the reason is that I don't know who exactly the audience was for this, but it certainly does answer that question of like, I don't want to watch a boring documentary about the Prohibition. I'd rather watch something a bit more, liven it up. And so it's getting information out to people. So it's also possible that maybe the target audience was, younger or something like that as well.
Yeah, I get that impression. You can imagine this being shown in a classroom in school or something. It'd be a fun documentary to watch.
Exactly.
For an hour. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We also have to be wary of, that's saying you shouldn't be judging history but using today's standards. So we think the idea of Prohibition is just outrageous, ridiculous. But
yeah, I'm pretty sure Ken Burns does a documentary about Prohibition. I could be wrong on that. I was actually trying to look it up there when we were talking, but I was trying to focus more on what you guys were saying versus actually my computer. But I'm pretty sure Ken Burns does a documentary about Prohibition that's a multi-part series that's much more involved than this and is really good and much more kind of that neutral standpoint of like, it wasn't all like fun and racing down dirt roads, evading the cops kind of stuff.
There must be a lot of violence as well, and that kind of it didn't really show much of that.
Yeah, no, they didn't. But it was nice Olmsted's idea of like, well, look, we're not going to carry guns. So at least there was somebody. And at one point, I believe he was the largest employer in the state of Washington during Prohibition era because of all the people that was involved in the running business. So like under the radar era, illegal employer, but still. So that says something there too. And it was interesting, the fact that he was the first person convicted using wiretapping as well in the United States. So it's kind of set that precedent.
Like they did say, I think you touched on this already, that it didn't have the same criminality, or supposedly, as I had, say, in places like Chicago with Al Capone. Although they did mention him because his brother came.
Yeah.
And then suspiciously, this hole got burned to the ground. So there must have been something going on there.
Like, why would his brother show up there if not, I'm sure it wasn't just to watch a show at this theater that he wanted to buy. There were certainly ulterior motives for a visit like that. Absolutely. Well, should we rate it?
For me, it was a really interesting documentary and gave me an insight into Prohibition, especially in Washington State. And yeah, it was a good mix of kind of theatrical aspects, photographs, to camera interviews, and yeah, really enjoyed it. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars.
Gosh, I'm unsure now. It was for what it was very good, very entertaining. Like I don't know. I did watch it in one sitting, but that's because I left it really late to watch it. I have to watch this now. So, but yeah, it did. It was a good film, and I recommend it. Somebody wants to find out about this. But I will. I'll do my usual start at 3, and I am going to tug it half a star for the way I felt it was trying to manipulate the story, and the music I find a bit annoying at times. So 2.5.
So I think it's a great entry point, especially like if you don't know much about this era. This is something that would get you interested and be like, I want to actually learn more about Prohibition or how it affected the Pacific Northwest, or maybe some of the people mentioned in this. And as somebody who's seen a lot of very poorly edited documentaries, I'm giving them extra props for that. So I'm going to go 4 stars. 4 stars on this one for me.
Okay.
All right. Well, there you have it. No Budget Filmcast audience. Divided court on this one. The only way for you to decide is to watch it for yourself. We, of course, will throw a link into the show notes so you can check it out and let us know via a comment or a reaching out to us on social media, which is at No Budget Show on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. And with that, we will say goodbye and see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.